Space Marines are known as one of the most muscular-looking super soldiers in all fiction. They're huge, standing at 7 to 8 feet tall or more, approximately 2.4 meters. But do they qualify as bodybuilders? Many of you may think, what the heck, Space Marines? They are like so much bigger than a bodybuilder, are you kidding me? And yes, you would be right, they are. But here is the thing. While Space Marines have a lot of muscle, what they lack is one of the most important things of being a bodybuilder. And what would disqualify them directly? Let's entertain the idea though. Even if they manage to somehow qualify for a bodybuilding competition, a Space Marine would be at the very last place. But I hear you say, Empress, Space Marines are on so many hormones and have different organs to make them badass and live long. How can a stupid bodybuilder have something that a Space Marine doesn't? Well, let me paint the picture for you. While a Space Marine has an amazing physique, incomparable to anyone else that is human, they lack a key structural features needed for a great or even semi-good bodybuilder. In all of the art that is out there of Space Marines, they are always depicted as being square as SpongeBob, sometimes even having narrow shoulders and a very large waist. That is a huge no-no when it comes to bodybuilding. To be a great bodybuilder, and let's take it even further, to be the greatest bodybuilder, a man must have broad shoulders naturally. First, a small waist, good muscle bellies, and great muscle insertions. What does that mean? It is the way that the muscle attaches to the bones with the ligaments that determines its shape. Also, he must have symmetrical abdominal muscles and preferably a 6 or an 8-pack. Remember, I'm talking about the best male genetics ever possible. Square jaw, of course. Straight legs, everything proportional, symmetrical to one another. One word. Aesthetics. Now maybe you would say, Space Marines are not about aesthetics but performance. Yes, but that is not the point. And aren't those two connected? Space Marines are only those who are most exceptional, which means that they must have the best male genetics possible. But they are never depicted like that. So why is this? Let's take a scientific assessment, break things down and reach a conclusion. Space Marines are indeed drawn from a tiny fraction of the male population. Only the most exceptional candidates survive the brutal trials and implantation process. These candidates are typically recruited as adolescents, pre-puberty or early puberty around 10 to 14 years old, from a pharaoh or warrior cultures where physical prowess and resilience are already evident. The gene seed and subsequent augmentations built on this foundation. For a candidate to even qualify, they likely need a genetic profile that supports exceptional development. Let's map these traits: broad shoulders, small waist, square jaw, great muscle insertions, even abs, etc., and see how they fit. Broad shoulders come from a wide clavicle and robust deltoid upper back musculature, while a small waist suggests low body fat and a tight core. Scientifically, this V-taper is tied to high parental testosterone exposure, which influences skeletal structure and muscle distribution. Space Marine candidates would likely have this naturally, as it's a marker of physical dominance and athletic potential. Traits the Imperium would prize. A strong square jawline is another testosterone-driven trait, linked to the robust craniofacial development. It's not directly functional for combat, but it correlates with overall genetic health and hormonal balance, qualities that could help a candidate endure the gene seed process. The Imperium might not care about looks, but a square jaw could be a byproduct of selecting for high testosterone resilient recruits. Muscle insertions, where tendons attached to the bones, are purely genetic and determine how muscles look and perform. Great insertions, long muscle bellies with short tendons, create that full aesthetic look bodybuilders chase. For Space Marines, optimal insertions would enhance strength and endurance, making them more effective warriors. The selection process might favor boys whose early musculature hints at this potential, as it would synergize with the Biscopia implant's muscle growth effects. Symmetrical, well-defined abs reflect low body fat, good core genetics, and overall physical harmony. While abs themselves aren't a priority for Space Marines, armor covers them anyway. Symmetry is a marker of developmental stability, meaning fewer genetic defects. The gene seed process is notoriously unforgiving, so candidates with high symmetry and genetic clean lines might have a better shot at surviving the organ implants and hormonal upheaval. Here's where it gets interesting. Even if a candidate starts with perfect male genetics, say a naturally broad shoulders, narrow-waisted, square-jawed kid with killer insertions, the gene seed takes it to an extreme. The Biscopia and Osmodua amplify muscle mass and bone density beyond human limits, while the Hemastamen and Laramans organ supercharge recovery and endurance. The result? A physique that retains some of that original proportionality, broad shoulders, tight waist, but scales it up massively. Think 8 feet tall, 500 plus pounds of muscle with a ribcage fused into a bulletproof blade. Scientifically, I'd estimate the Space Marines candidate should have near perfect male genetics as a starting point to maximize their odds of surviving and thriving post-augmentation. The gene seed that amplifies these traits into something superhuman, retaining some of that aesthetic appeal but prioritizing function over form. They'd likely step off the recruitment ship looking like teenage bodybuilding prodigies and emerge from the apothecarian as walking tanks with traces of that original perfection. This may be because of all the enhancements, Space Marines lose their aesthetics, but you can't really lose broad shoulders, even if your waist gets thicker. Some are depict Space Marines as having narrow shoulders and a thicker waist at the same time, which is not logical to me based on what we discussed. Then why are these super soldiers depicted this way? It's because some artists and writers don't actually have an idea of human structure and so on. Too many people having a ton of muscle is impressive enough and they can't tell the differences. But I certainly can, having most of my life thus far spent on learning about sustaining a good body for men and women, all naturally. Thus I want to dive a bit deeper and see if these perfect bodybuilding ratios are also great for performance. And will they make more sense for a Space Marine to have? So, performance applications. Best performance depends on the context. Athleticism, strength, endurance, or combat. But men with these genetics often have a head start. And here is why. Let's take a look at broad shoulders and upper body strength connection. Wider shoulders mean longer clavicles, which provide better leverage for upper body movements. Pressing, pulling, throwing. Studies on biomechanics like those in Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research show that shoulder width correlates with greater force production in exercises like the bench press and overhead lift. This also supports larger deltoid, pectoral, and latissimus dorsi muscles, which are key for power-based activities. Think swinging a sword or hurling a spear. Small waist and core efficiency. A narrow waist with low body fat suggests a high muscle-to-fat ratio and a strong, compact core. This improves stability and force transfer between the upper and lower body, crucial for explosive movements like sprinting, jumping, or grappling. Research on athletes, sprinters, or wrestlers shows that a lower waist-to-hip ratio often correlates with better agility and power output, as there's less dead weight to carry. Muscle insertions and mechanical advantage. Great insertions, long muscle bellies, short tendons don't just look pretty, they optimize force production. For example, a longer bicep belly means more contractile tissue, increasing pulling strength. That is why some bodybuilders with perfect genetics also excel in strength sports. They've got the hardware for it. A 2018 study in sports medicine noted that muscle insertions points influence torque and efficiency, giving those with ideal setups an edge in lifting or combat. So are they built for best performance? Yes, but with caveats. These genetics align with power and strength-based performance more than pure endurance or flexibility. Broad shoulders and good insertions scream weightlifting, wrestling, or combat sports. In a Space Marine context, smashing foes with a chainsword or shrugging off blows, the V-taper and low-fat enhance mobility while maintaining mass. There's a bit of endurance trade-off. Super broad shoulders and heavy musculature can weigh you down over long distances. Elite marathon runners, for example, tend to have narrow frames to optimize oxygen efficiency, so these perfect genetics might not be ideal for ultramarathons unless paired with exceptional aerobic capacity. As for flexibility, a hypermuscular, broad-shouldered frame might limit range of motion compared to a leaner build, less ideal for gymnastics or martial arts requiring fluidity. But here comes the amazing Space Marine armor to compensate for aerobic capacity and speed overall. So no problem there. Men with the best genetics for broad shoulders, small waist and great insertions are indeed built for high performance, especially in strength, power and combat scenarios. They are not universal athletes. Endurance or flexibility may lack, but for raw physical dominance, they are near optimal. For Space Marines, this is the perfect starting point. A chassis designed for war, turbocharged by science. Then why not start depicting them in the most optimal way possible? Well, my golden Astartes, if you like, watch this next and don't forget to leave your deep thoughts down below.